4 teenagers pitched a tent by a quiet Finnish lake. By sunrise, 3 of them were dead, stabbed and beaten through the canvas while they slept. The 4th survived, but here's the part no one can explain. He was found lying on top of the tent, without a scratch on his face. This is the Lake Bodom murders, and almost 60 years later, nobody knows who did it. June 5th, 1965. A warm Saturday evening in southern Finland. 4 teenagers, 2 boys, 2 girls, loaded their bicycles with camping gear and headed for the shores of Lake Bodom, just 22 kilometers outside Helsinki. Their names were Mila Björklund and Anja Mäki, both just 15 years old. With them were 18-year-old Seppo Boisman and his friend Niels Gustafsson, also 18. They were, by every account, ordinary Finnish teenagers looking forward to an ordinary weekend. They pitched a single canvas tent on the southwestern shore of the lake, within sight of the still water. They cooked a meal, they laughed, they took photographs. Some of those photographs still exist, and when you look at them now, knowing what's coming, they're almost unbearable to see. Around 11 p.m., the teenagers climbed inside the tent and zipped it shut. That's the last moment anyone can confirm all 4 of them were alive. Between midnight and 6 a.m., something walked out of the Finnish woods, and whatever it was didn't leave survivors. Well, not exactly. Stay with me, because the survivor's story is the strangest part of this entire case. The next morning, around 6 a.m., a group of boys who'd been birdwatching nearby spotted something strange on the lakeshore. The tent they'd seen the night before was collapsed, crushed down, as if something heavy had fallen onto it. At first, they thought it was a prank. Then they got closer, and then they ran. When police arrived, what they found defied explanation. The tent had been partially collapsed, the canvas slashed and punched inward. Inside, 3 bodies: Mila, Anja, Seppo. All of them had been stabbed or beaten through the tent itself while they slept. But there was a 4th person. Niels Gustafsson, the only survivor, was lying on top of the crumpled tent. His jaw was broken, he had fractured facial bones, he was bruised and concussed, but he was alive, and he would not or could not remember a single thing. Investigators were stunned. Why was the survivor on top of the tent instead of inside it? Why were his injuries so different from the others? And here's the detail that would haunt Finnish detectives for decades. I'll get to it in just a minute. The crime scene itself offered almost no physical evidence. No murder weapon was ever found at the lake. No clear fingerprints. No reliable footprints in the damp ground. The killer had vanished like smoke into the Finnish pine forest. Witnesses came forward almost immediately. A local man reported seeing a stranger near the lake the night of the murders, described as blonde, wearing light clothing, acting nervous. Another witness described a completely different man, dark-haired, older, walking away from the lake in the early morning. 2 witnesses, 2 descriptions, neither matched, and that was just the beginning of a case that would contradict itself for nearly 60 years. The first major suspect was a kiosk worker named Valdemar Gillström. He lived near the lake. He was known in the local area as hostile, mentally unstable, openly aggressive toward campers. He reportedly tore down tents and threatened strangers who came near his property. Locals whispered that Gillström had confessed, multiple times, to people who knew him. But police dismissed him. And in 1969, 4 years after the murders, Gillström walked into the same lake and drowned himself. His confession, if it existed, drowned with him. Then came the second suspect, a German immigrant named Hans Assmann, who showed up at a nearby hospital the day after the murders, disheveled, with red stains on his clothing, acting erratically. Some investigators were convinced he was the killer. Assmann had a strange past, rumored KGB ties, unexplained travel, aliases. Conspiracy theorists latched on, but again, no charges, no hard evidence. He was released, and here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. For decades, the Lake Bodom case went cold. The 1970s passed, the 1980s, the 1990s. Finland moved on, but the lake never did. Parents told their children not to camp there. Locals avoided the shoreline at night. The case became the stuff of Finnish folklore. And then, in 2004, 39 years after the murders, Finnish police did something that stunned the entire country. They arrested someone for the Lake Bodom murders, and the name they announced was the last name anyone expected. They arrested Niels Gustafsson, the survivor. Police now claimed that Niels, the boy found bloodied on top of the tent, had actually killed his 3 friends in a jealous rage over Mila, his girlfriend. They said his injuries had been self-inflicted or inflicted during a struggle with his own friends. They said the whole story of an outside intruder was a cover. For almost 40 years, the trial gripped Finland. Prosecutors argued motive. They pointed to blood spatter analysis. They pointed to the shoes Niels had been wearing, allegedly covered in the victim's blood. It sounded airtight. But the defense had something devastating, something that would reframe the entire case. And this is the twist almost nobody outside of Finland knows. The defense proved that Niels's injuries were too severe to be self-inflicted. His jaw was shattered. His face was smashed in. Medical experts testified it would have been physically impossible for him to then attack 3 other people, drag himself on top of a tent, and wait to be found. Worse for the prosecution, the blood evidence on his shoes was inconclusive. The spatter analysis was based on decades-old, degraded photographs, and crucially, the original investigators in 1965 had always insisted the attacker came from outside the tent. In October 2005, Niels Gustafsson was acquitted. Fully. The court didn't just find him not guilty, they ruled he was an additional victim. Finland even paid him compensation for the wrongful prosecution, which means, officially, the Lake Bodom murders are unsolved. And here's where it gets unsettling, because if Niels didn't do it, and Gillström took his secret to the grave, and Assman was never charged, then whoever walked out of those woods on June 5, 1965, was never caught. Now, remember that detail I said would haunt Finnish detectives? Here it is, the shoes. When police arrived at the scene, Seppo Boisman's shoes were missing. Not lost in the struggle, not kicked into the woods, missing. The killer had taken them. Why would someone murder 3 teenagers and walk away with a single pair of shoes? Some investigators believed it was a trophy, the mark of a killer who wanted to remember. Others believed the killer's own shoes had been damaged or blood-stained, and Seppo's were the nearest replacement. We'll never know. And there's one more haunting detail. The killer stabbed the tent through the canvas, which means they couldn't have clearly seen who they were attacking. This wasn't personal, it wasn't a jealous rage. It was random, brutal, and methodical. Which raises the darkest question of all. If it was random, how many other campsites did this person pass that night before choosing this one? Today, Lake Bodom looks peaceful. Tourists visit, locals fish, children swim along the same shoreline where 3 teenagers died screaming in the dark. There's no plaque, no memorial, just water and trees and silence. Finnish authorities have said that forensic evidence from the case still exists. DNA technology continues to advance. In theory, the killer, or their descendants, could still be identified. In practice, the most promising suspects are dead. The physical evidence has degraded. The witnesses are gone. The story has become a ghost, passed from generation to generation, whispered, theorized, dramatized, but never solved. Niels Gustafsson, the only survivor, lived the rest of his life under the weight of that night. Acquitted, but never free. Believed by some, doubted by others. He has said, in the few interviews he's given, that he simply doesn't remember. And perhaps that's the kindest thing his mind could do for him. Because somewhere out there, or somewhere buried in a forgotten Finnish grave, is the person who walked down to Lake Bodom on June 5, 1965, and walked away before the sun came up. 3 teenagers murdered through a tent, 1 survivor who couldn't remember, a suspect who drowned himself, a foreigner with KGB rumors, a wrongful arrest 40 years later, and a missing pair of shoes that may be the only real clue that ever existed. The Lake Bodom murders aren't just unsolved, they're a reminder that some killers really do walk away. If this case haunted you the way it haunts me, subscribe for more cold case deep dives every week, and comment crime below if you want the full uncut investigation.